Hello, and this is going to be another episode of the series Motivational Monday Live with your host, Aura Elena Martinez. And this week's episode is entitled Time to Spring into Action. And no worries, I'm going to cover what do I mean with action, because it's not just any actions, and that's going to get you to quantum leap or step into the life that you are wanting. But before I start with this week's episode, I'm going to start by introducing myself if this is the first time that you are watching this series, and tell you a little bit about what motivated me to start this series to begin with. So once again, my name is Arlena Martinez, and I'm a self-discovery and empowerment coach, helping women gain total clarity in their purpose so that they can wake up to daily fulfillment and certainty. Now, purpose is not to be limited to just a calling. And why is that? Because you could be living your calling and still not be living your most purposeful life. Why is that? Because a purposeful life is also consists of emotional well-being, mental well-being, spiritual well-being, physical well-being, and why not financial well-being? This is because every part of you and your life matters. Every part of you and your life matters. And what motivated me to create this series, Motivational Monday Live, is that Monday tends to be that day of the week that some feel like, oh my God, it's another start of the week. Same old, gotta go to work and all this stuff, right? If that's you, let me just say that let that be your sign. Let it be your sign that something has to change. Either something within you or outside of you or both, but something needs to change because you're not meant to be like, oh my God, same old, right? Feeling anxious because it's the start of the week. You're not meant to be feeling that way. And it is my sincere desire that with this series, you start looking forward to Mondays. Why? Because you know that every Monday you're going to be filled up with goodness. You're going to be filled up mentally with goodness, emotionally with goodness, spiritually with goodness. And it is also my desire that you get closer and closer to your truth. And why does that matter? Because the more you know what your truth is, the more you're able to live authentically. And that's when you're able to experience a level of happiness that doesn't rely on anything outside of you to feel happiness, right? And ultimately, that's what we all want, right? And it is also my desire that with this series, you keep leveling up your level of consciousness. Why does this matter? When you are looking at the first floor, I'm going to use the following as an analogy. When you're at the first floor looking outside, everything looks big, right? The cars look big, the buildings look big, everything looks big, right? The moment you go to the 10th floor, you start seeing things a little differently. The cars that were once looking very big, they start looking smaller. People start looking like miniatures, and the buildings don't look as big as they look when we are either on the ground or the first floor. In other words, you start gaining a different perspective. As you keep raising your level of consciousness, whatever you may have found to be very big starts looking smaller for you. You start gaining a new perspective. You start seeing life differently. You start seeing yourself differently. And I'm telling you, our level of consciousness dictates what we're able to grasp, what we're able to understand, right? Sometimes there are times that the reason why we don't get something or we don't get the value of something or just something doesn't hit, we're not at the level of consciousness to receive it. And so it is so important that we're always looking to raise our level of consciousness. And so it's my intention that with this series, you're always filling yourself up. You're always up leveling your level of consciousness. Trust when I tell you, that's going to make a massive difference in your life. Okay. You're going to start seeing yourself in life differently. So once again, what this episode is all about is time to spring into action. And I know that I've said since the very beginning that I'm not here to motivate you, and I'm still not. Okay. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm here to transform you, not to motivate you. And because I do not rely on motivation. I don't. Because I'm going to be honest with you, not all the time do I feel motivated, the way most people do not feel motivated, right? And in order for you to understand this even deeply, I'm going to highly recommend, if you didn't watch the very first episode of this series, you're going to want to watch it because you're going to understand what I mean with not relying on motivation. Motivation is very fleeting. So you're going to understand even deeply why it's not a good idea for you to be relying on motivation. So I highly recommend. So subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you can watch the very first episode because it's gonna be gold for you. Trust, it's gonna be good. Okay, so even though I've said that before, that I'm not here to motivate you, however, this episode is going to be a little bit different because I am here today to motivate you and inspire you and also transform you, more than anything, to transform you. Okay. And if you've been experiencing stuck energy, if you've been discouraged from continue on with your dreams, with your desires, if you haven't seen much movement, now I feel like I have something in my eye. If you haven't seen much movement in all that you have done, and so you're about to call it quits, right? You're about to give up on your dreams, on your desires, on your vision, on yourself. If you feel that the road towards your desired life has been hard, it's time for you to spring into action. You're going to want to listen to this episode. And it's my sincere desire that after this episode, you get out of this, that you get out of the stuckness, that you get out of the low vibeness, the negative thinking, the making the wrong decisions for yourself. And I'm going to go more into that. So please stick with me, okay? Because this is big. The procrastinating, I want you to get out of all that. It's time for you to spring into action, right? Because I want you to get out of that. And you need to want to get out of that too, right? And I want you to consider this. And this is why it's so important that you start taking action. And don't worry, I'm going to go into what kind of action you want to be taking, okay? I want you to consider the following. What's the consequence of you not taking any action? What's the consequence? Sometimes we fool ourselves into thinking that we can avoid a decision by not making a decision. And when you're not making a decision or when you're avoiding a decision, that in and of itself is a decision. Everything and anything is a decision. All right. Anytime you avoid a decision that would actually up level you and your life massively, you're making the decision to be stuck. You're making the decision to remain in the same cycle you're in. Okay? This is why your actions matter. Your actions matter. And I want you to remember this. No action equals stagnant. Thank you for the like. No action equals being stagnant. Action is what gets things moving. Because what action does is that it facilitates the manifestation of what you want. That's what action does. That's why action is so important. Where I see many people get tripped up when it comes to action is the following. And I want you to really pay attention to what I'm about to say because this is huge. This is huge. Everything that I'm about to say from here on out is going to be huge. Okay. So I want to talk about the two kinds of actions that you're going to want to consider if you are wanting to massively shift something or shift an area of you or your life. Okay. The first action you're going to always want to be taking is number one, either one of these two, but number one is inspired action. Inspired action. We hear about this a lot, actually. And if I'm not mistaken, this came from the book, The Secret, and it actually turned into a movie. So this is not something that I came up. This is from The Secret, if I'm not mistaken, that turned into a movie, right? And I'm going to say a few things about inspired action because there's so much validity to this, right? Many times the action that you feel inspired to take is not going to make any sense to you whatsoever. It's not going to make any sense to you whatsoever. A lot of times the action that you feel inspired to take won't make sense to others. Other times, the actions that you feel inspired to take defies your own reality, your own outer reality. Okay? And an example of this is when what you feel inspired to do doesn't make any sense financially, or it is financially, quote unquote, impossible. And the reason why I bring this up is because sometimes we could be blinded into thinking that inspired action is supposed to feel comfortable and good and giddy and woo, no, not necessarily. Not necessarily. So don't allow yourself to be blinded by that. Don't be blinded by that. The second type of action that you want to be taking is what I like to call your soul's evolution next step. Stay with me because you're really gonna grasp what I mean with this. I've spoken about this before, but I'm gonna mention it here as well. And that's my term to explain a step that you take that quantum leaps you because it's the next step that you need for your own development as a person. That's very different from just taking any kind of action. So I mentioned the first one is inspired action. This one is your soul's evolution next step. This is important. This is so important, okay? And I'm going to use as an example the following because I want to illustrate this. I want you to really get this because one mistake that we make at times is that we take the next step, but it's the logical step. Right? And if you notice that by you taking the logical step, things still are not clicking, this is why. Because you missed a critical component, and that's your soul's evolution next step. The logical step may be a future step. It's certainly going to be a step that you're going to need, but it's not the step that you need this red hot minute. It's completely different, right? And so for those of you that are entrepreneurs, anybody that's entrepreneur, and even if you're not an entrepreneur, I want you to listen to this example and see how and in what way does this apply to you in your life. So say, for example, if you're an entrepreneur, you're wanting to be an entrepreneur, and you're posting, you're making videos and all this stuff, but no sales, nothing is happening. So I'm going to ask you the following. What is the next step? The next step is going to seem to be that you got to learn sales, or perhaps you got to learn marketing, right? Hey, if you're an entrepreneur, you got to learn about sales. That's very, very important. You need to know how to sell. Marketing is very important, right? You need to know how to market. It's a very important skill to get. So because that's what seems to be the problem, you go on to taking sales and marketing courses, or you probably hired the sales or marketing coach, right? But what about if everything that you're learning, for whatever reason, something still isn't clicking? Something just still isn't clicking. You're trying all the things you're learning. By the way, if you're trying, there's no such thing as trying. You're either doing or you're not doing. Either one, but there's no such thing as trying. But what about if nothing is clicking? Like something is not clicking. It seems hard to implement. You just cannot get things to shift. The problem in this case is not the sales or the marketing course. The problem isn't even the coach. Right? What if instead what you need to work on is on your self-confidence, your self-esteem, your self-love, any fear that may be standing in the way? In that case, your next step is not sales or marketing. That's not your next step. It's all the things that I just mentioned earlier. That is your next step. You working on your self-confidence, on your self-esteem, on your self-love, removing that fear. Because I can guarantee you, if you have any of that lingering, it doesn't matter how much you learn sales or marketing, it is not going to click. Because the problem is not that you need to learn sales. The problem is there's something else that's getting in the way of the whole sales stuff. That's what needs to be cleaned up. And then anything else that you put on top of that, it's just going to sink in. It's just going to sink in. It's going to start clicking, right? Sometimes we may fail, not because of lack of action, but because we take the wrong action. The wrong action for ourselves. I want to clarify that. Because in this case, there's nothing wrong with taking sales or marketing courses. Absolutely not. It's just that it's the wrong action for now, because it's not going to click as long as you have something else going on. You see where I'm going with this? This is why all of this matters. This is why I highly recommend that you focus on your journey. Your journey, not someone else's journey, not what took someone else where they're at. No, your journey, right? And that you focus on your next step, right? Don't focus on the other two steps that you'll need to take further down the road. No. It's your next step. If you get ahead of yourself, you will feel like you're going backwards or like you're behind. And the reason why you're going to feel that way is because you were not ready for that step. You got ahead of yourself. You're not ready for that, right? Something else is required before that step can come into play, before you can take that step. When you get ahead of yourself with the steps, you're giving room for the lies to go in. You're giving room for the lies. Think about it. Instead of you focusing on the next step, if you start taking steps that are way ahead of you, this is going ahead, but not you. And so it gives space for lies to go in. What do I mean with lies? Let me utilize the same example that I utilized earlier. You're an entrepreneur. You notice that you're not making sales, blah, 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 blah. But here you are taking sales courses. But that's not really the issue. The issue is something else. And that's the reason why things are not starting to click. So, but you take the sales courses and you take the marketing courses, right? But you're not ready for that step. Remember that, because there's other funky things that need to be removed. So here you are, here you're taking these courses. And because you notice that you are not moving, even though your actions are, that gives room for you to believe, if you start noticing that whatever you're implementing is just not working, or just something isn't clicking. Oh my God, probably this isn't for me. Probably I don't have what it takes. What's wrong with me? Probably I shouldn't be doing this. So you see what I mean, that it gives room for the lies. It's not that what you want isn't meant for you. It's just that that step, you went too ahead of yourself. There was something else that needed to occur before you took that step. You see what I'm saying? You don't want to be giving room for none of that. You want to focus on your next step, because for as long as you focus on your next step, your actions will not be the only things that are moving ahead. So will you. And that's what I've noticed in people, that it seems like they're taking all this massive action, but there's nothing to show for it. And the biggest problem is that you're taking this massive action, but it's not the action that you needed to take. Again, sometimes the reason why we quote unquote fail, and I say quote unquote fail because there's always a lesson there, right? But let's call it fail. The reason why we quote unquote fail, meaning we don't see ourselves moving along with the so-called actions that we're taking, is because that's not the action that we're meant to be taking this very hot minute. There's something else that needs to occur first. Your soul's evolution next step. You taking the next step for your own development. And that requires a high level of awareness. That requires you knowing where you're at in your journey. That requires you to have focus and not be paying attention. I really could care what anybody else is doing. Anybody that is where I aspire to be, I admire them, good for them. I don't care what step they took. That doesn't mean that's the step that I need to take that's going to take me where they're at. Do you get what I'm saying? So that requires this level of self-awareness. You gaining clarity as to what it is that you need next and not getting too ahead of yourself. Okay? All right. So when you get ahead of yourself with these steps, like I said before, you're giving room for all these lies. And this is why clarity is so important. Clarity is huge. I'm big on clarity for that very reason. Because when we lack clarity, we don't see ourselves clearly. We don't see what's in front of us clearly. We don't see our life clearly. We don't see what's going on clearly. And when you're not seeing yourself and what's going on with full-blown clarity, that's when you can make decisions that are not the right ones for you. That's when you could find yourself thinking things that are not what you have any business thinking of. Having clarity is huge as to your next step. Clarity is huge, so important. So I'm going to encourage you to ask yourself the following. If you feel stuck in a rut, all right? First question, what is the consequence of not taking the right, that's the key, the right action? I want you to remember, it's not taking just any action that's going to take you there. It's you taking the right action for you. And two of the best actions that you can ever take that it will always quantum leap you is inspired action and your soul's evolution next step. So what is the consequence of not taking the right action? Is it worth you remaining where you're at? And if so, and you find yourself complaining, then stop complaining. Stop complaining. I'm going to say this with so much love. You lose your right to complain the moment that you're not willing to do anything to change where you're at. And I say that with so much love. If it's not worth it to remain where you're at, then what are you willing to do to change it? What are you willing to do to change it? What is it costing you to still spin around? One thing I'm going to say about spinning around, and I really want you to really let this sink in, right? It's very important that you gain awareness of how you spin around. This is huge. This is so important because boy, oh boy, are there many ways that we could be spinning, okay? And we don't even realize it. We're not even aware of it. And I'm going to share with you some of the ways that I've spinned in the past. And as you're listening to all this, I want you to think about how are you spinning? And you're not even realizing it. It's time to bring this all up to your awareness. So one of the ways that I used to spin and spin and spin is I used to ignore my intuition and ignore whatever inspired action that I would receive and went for what felt easy or accessible, aka whatever wouldn't challenge me. You believe that? Being mindful. As you're listening to this, think about, are you doing this yourself? Because if you're doing this, I can guarantee you're still going to be stuck in 6 months right where you're at. You want to know where you're going to be in 6 months? Just look at how your life is, if that's what you're doing. Okay? Another thing I used to do is I would invest in things that inspired me rather than transform me. Ooh, this is huge. Ooh, this is huge. Let me tell you this. And if you're investing in things that give you the high, there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to tell you from personal experience that when you invest to transform your life, that's the best investment that you can make. That high that you experience from that inspiration that you receive, that's great and all, but that wears off very quickly. That wears off very quickly, right? And then it becomes like a drug that you need more doses of it just for you to experience the original high that you experienced once upon a time. Whereas if you invest in your transformation, you will get all the inspiration that you need and then some. You really will. When you witness your own growth, your own mental shift, your emotional shift, your physical shift, your spiritual shift, your energetic shift, your shift in your actions, all this will have you inspired all day, all month, all year. All of this is going to have you really inspired. And I want you to remember the following. You are the best investment that you will ever make. Like, I really want you to get that. Like, you are the best investment that you will ever make. And you betting on yourself is part of that transformation. We sometimes don't realize that, and that's part of the transformation. You investing in yourself is part of that transformation. All right? And the reason for that is because you are investing your resources, you have skin in the game. You have skin in the game. You're always going to value what cost you something, right? What cost you money, what cost you resources, what cost you time, what cost you your mental space. It's something that you're going to value a whole lot more. It's something that you're going to be more all in, right? This is why this matters. This is why I say that you betting on yourself is part of the transformation. It really is. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Okay? So going back to what I mentioned before, be mindful of how you're spinning. This is so important. There are so many ways to spin that we don't even realize that that's what we're doing. Right? That we don't even realize that that's what we're doing. For as long as this is out of our awareness, we won't step into the life that we so crave. This is why this deep level of awareness matters. And if you springing into action is a challenge, and you getting out of the spin is a challenge, then I'm going to invite you to start asking yourself the following questions. What are these challenges? What truths do you have to start admitting to yourself? What part of you is wanting to reveal itself to you? And there's a reason why I invite you to ask yourself this question. And it's because there are times that the reason why whatever it is that we're wanting to do is a challenge is because a part of us may not be on board with what it is that we say that we want. And when that is the case, it's time to investigate. It's time to really find out what is going on. I want you to remember this too. Anytime there is resistance when taking action, there is information there for you. Okay? That doesn't mean that you don't take any action. What that means is that you lean into the resistance so that you can get that information that it is wanting to reveal itself to you. Do not make the mistake of interpreting or misinterpreting, better yet to say, misinterpreting the resistance for perhaps I'm not supposed to be doing this. I should stop. This is not what I should be doing. Because if you make that mistake, You're always going to go back to your comfort zone. You're always going to go back to what's familiar for you. You're going to take yourself back to the same old, same old. And so nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to change. And that's one of the things that I've seen in people, that the moment they start experiencing resistance, they interpret it as, probably I should stay away. Oh my God, this is too much. No, this is probably not for me. And for as long as you do that, you are pushing away your dream. You are pushing away what you desire. That resistance is there, not for you to push away from it, for you to get closer to it, for you to understand it, for you to get, where is it coming from? What is this all about? What is this? That's what you do with that resistance. That is what you do with that resistance. So it is my sincere desire that you let all this sink in. And that if you find yourself in any stuckness or anything, that you always take action, but not just any action. The two main action that you always want to be looking into is inspired action and your soul's evolution next step. Because for as long as you're taking one of those two actions, you will quantum leap. You will see that your actions and you are moving together. You're moving together. It's not like you're taking action and you're still here. No, you're moving together. It's in sync, one after the other, right? And if you're ready to get the clarity that you need, your clarity on your purpose, your clarity on your next step, your clarity as to what are the blocks, really uncover those blocks and then turn those blocks into stepping stones that gets you closer and closer to the life that you want. You're ready to really become the version of you that vision of yours requires out of you. If you're ready for all that, then I'm going to highly recommend that you schedule your clarity call with me. I'm always putting that link. You can always message me, because in that call, we're going to find out where you are now, where you desire to be, what is necessary to close that gap, and how I'm able to help you. Because you don't need to be stuck. You don't need to be confused. You don't need to not know what is your next step or anything like that. You don't need to be stuck in fear. I'm going to be right by your side through the resistance, through the fear, through whatever that comes up. If you love everything that I share, imagine what it would be like to work one-on-one with me. Because I am not letting you stay stuck. No way, Jose. No way, Jose. So start taking that action. Start taking that action. And share this video with other people. You never know who in your space needs to listen to this message, because this is the message that's going to move them forward. This is the message that's going to transform them within them one way or another. You just never know. You just never know what the people around you are going through. So share this video with others. And it is my sincere desire that you let all of this sink in. Let it all sink in. And with this said, it is my desire that you live life to the max, the way you are destined to live. And until next time, bye for now.